Page 1. Appendix 1. Itinerary of Committee, 1946, January 4th to 17th. Washington Full Committee, January 23rd to February 4th. London Full Committee, February 5th to 15th. American Zone of Germany, Mr. Krum. Czechoslovakia, Sir Frederick Leggett, February 5th to 22nd. Paris, Mr. Phillips. French Zones of Germany and Austria, Mr. MacDonald, February 5th to 17th. Berlin, Judge Hutchison, Sir John Singleton, Lord Morrison, Mr. Buxton, Mr. Manningham Buller, Mr. Crick, February 7th to 13th. Poland, Mr. Buxton, Mr. Manningham Buller, Mr. Crick, February 8th to 11th. British Zone of Germany, Judge Hutchison, Sir John Singleton, Lord Morrison, February 17th to 25th. Vienna Full Committee, February 19th to 22nd. American Zone of Austria, Mr. Buxton, Mr. Manningham Buller, Mr. Crick, February 25th to 26th. British Zone of Austria, Mr. Krum, Mr. Crossman, February 25th to 27th. Italy, Sir John Singleton, February 27th to 28th. Athens, Mr. Phillips, Mr. MacDonald, Sir Frederick Leggett, February 28th to March 5th. Cairo Full Committee, March 6th to 28th. Palestine Full Committee, March 15th to 20th. Damascus, Beirut, Judge Hutchison, Lord Morrison, Mr. MacDonald, March 16th to 21st. Baghdad, Riyadh, Sir John Singleton, Mr. Buxton, Mr. Manningham Buller. Page 2. March 23rd to 24th. Amman, Lord Morrison, Mr. Phillips, Sir Frederick Leggett, March 29th to April 20th. Lausanne Full Committee, Page 1. Appendix 2. European Jury, Position in Various Countries. Germany, 1. In 1933, according to the census, there were in Germany 499,682 persons of the Jewish faith, of whom 400,935 were of German nationality. Between 1933 and 1941, around 300,000 persons were able to emigrate to other countries, though many must later have been overtaken as a result of the successive Nazi conquests. 2. There are now, according to our information, about 74,000 Jewish displaced persons, including migrants, in Berlin and the American, British, and French zones of Germany. Asterisk of these, about 52,500 are accommodated in the centers, the remainder living outside. In the British zone, out of approximately 11,700 in centers, 9,000 are at home. In the American zone, they are distributed in a number of centers, of which our subcommittee visited 9. 3. Of the non-German Jewish population, 85% are Poles. The remainder are mainly from the Baltic states, Hungary, and Romania. 4. In addition to displaced Jews, there are about 20,000 native Jews surviving in Germany. Evidence was presented to us to show that German Jews, freed from concentration camps or slave labor, are faced with great difficulty in finding a place again in the life of the country. Few of their communities still survive. For example, of a community of 4,500 in Stuttgart, only 178 remain, among whom are only 2 children. While it is the firm policy of the military governments to eradicate all forms of Nazism, and priority is given to Jews and to other persecuted persons in respect of housing, food, clothing, etc., the German Jews are still naturally apprehensive of the future, when those governments will no longer be there. Antisemitism is traditional in Germany. In some German circles there is much shame and a desire to make recompense, but in others there is a feeling that, now that the synagogues and all traces of Jewish life have been destroyed, only one rabbi survives in all of Germany. No attempt should be made to recreate Jewish life and so give rise to the possibility of a repetition of past events. 5. The Jews themselves feel that, most of their children having perished, their future in any case is dark. Asterisk British 15,600, French 1,600, American 54,000, Berlin 3,000. Page 2. More highly educated, particularly some of the professional Jews with whom we talked, appeared to have an interest in the building up of the communities, and are willing to stay and help. We suspect that this movement is developing, but we recognize that a few unfortunate incidents might well produce something of a panic and induce a change of attitude. The great need appears to be the restoration of property and financial help so that they may make a livelihood. Their lack of means adds greatly to their unwillingness to attempt to stay in Germany even when they are among friends. In Bavaria, the German state administrator for Jewish affairs has a keen realization of the important part played by the Jews in German commerce and industry. He made it clear that there was a real intention to give all possible encouragement to Jews to reestablish themselves. Unless, however, greater opportunities for employment can soon be found, it seems probable that few of the German Jews will wish to remain in the country. Austria. 6. It is estimated that when Hitler invaded Austria in 1938, there were about 190,000 Jews residing in the country. Excluding displaced persons and migrants, there are now some 4,500 in Vienna and an additional 2,500 in the American, British, and French zones. We were informed by members of the government that it was the government's desire to rehabilitate all Austrians on a basis of full equality and without discrimination, and that the government welcomed Austrian Jews, like other persons irrespective of religion, who wished to take part in the rebuilding of the country. We were shown a letter addressed to the government by a group numbering 1,000 Austrian Jews in Palestine and Egypt who wished to return. 7. Many of the Jews in Vienna are in receipt of assistance. The economy of the country was disrupted by the war, and its recovery is not facilitated by the division of such a small land into 4 zones and Vienna into 5 sectors. It seems probable that this division of control is partly responsible for the delay in the promulgation of laws for the restitution of the property, without which it is most difficult for Jews to reestablish themselves. Some anti-Semitism still exists among the general population. The fact that Jewish displaced persons are in receipt of higher rations than the surrounding population, and that, for instance, at Bad Gastein they are housed in some of the best hotels, tends towards a local feeling of hostility to them. This is reflected upon Jews who are living outside the centers. 8. There are centers for Jewish displaced persons in both the American and the British zones of Austria. In the page 3, American zone there were in February approximately 5,600 occupants, and on the 1st of April, 7,000. In the British zone in February there were 819, and on the 1st of April, 1,019. About 73% of the 8,000 were Polish Jews. The number in the British zone last November was in the neighborhood of 5,000. Partly owing to the activities of the Jewish Brigade of the British Army, a considerable number succeeded in crossing the Italian frontier, though the total number who have crossed since last summer is not assessed at more than 3,000. Later the Jewish Brigade were withdrawn, and the frontier controls tightened. 9. In Vienna converged 2 streams of migrants, one from Poland and another from Hungary and Romania. From Vienna the migrants usually continue westwards, through Enns and Salzburg to the American zone of Germany. On arrival in Vienna, the Jews are taken to transient centers. When some members of the committee visited one of them, the Rothschild Hospital, an American officer told them that 150 Hungarian Jewish children and 90 Romanian Jewish adults had arrived by train from Budapest the day before, and explained that the American Army authorities allowed the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee to collect Jews in Hungary and to organize their arrival in groups. 10. The Vienna Area Command operates transient centers for Jews at the Rothschild Hospital and the Strudelhof Gas, through which 3,085 Jews passed in December last, 3,229 in January, 2,443 in February, and 1,150 in March. Transient centers were also opened at Enns and Salzburg in the American zone. While at first endeavoring to check the flow of migrants, the American authorities felt impelled by humanitarian considerations to accept all who had arrived, after much hardship, at the border of the zone. 11. We found that the Jews were sent by train from Vienna through the Russian zone to Enns, and left a day or so later by lorries for Salzburg. They arrived in groups of 200. In the Salzburg transient camp which we visited, there was accommodation for 250, and we were told that the officer responsible had given instructions that the number was to be kept at that figure. The period of residence at this camp was limited. The camp was run under military supervision by a number of Jews, and they called out the names of those who were to move on. The flow through this camp was at the rate of 2,000 a month. The officer in Vienna got reports from the transient camp, As to the extent of the accommodation available from day to day and having regard to those reports and the way in which Jews were accumulating in Vienna, he authorized the dispatch of a certain number to the American zone and provided the group with a pass which would take them through to Salzburg. This showed quite a different practice from that adopted in the British zone, where efforts were made to prevent. Page 4. Unauthorized migration. We pointed this out, and we have now been advised that the practice in the American zone has been changed, and that it now accords with that followed in the British zone. This, we believe, is all to the good. Though on occasions Jews still arrive in Vienna in substantial numbers by train, their onward movement is no longer being facilitated. These migrants now receive the same ration as the ordinary Austrian civilian, 1,200 calories a day instead of the former ration of 2,300 to 2,400 a day, when they were treated as persecuted persons. In addition, however, they continue to receive parcels of food from the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, which amount at present to about 400 calories a day. 12. When there was constant movement, it was obviously easier for the military authorities to transport the migrants in groups on trains and trucks from Vienna, since failure to supply transport would not have stopped their progress to the American zone of Germany. The new policy, however, seems to be right in reducing the pressure upon certain areas, and in deterring Jews, unless there is compelling reason to the contrary, from complicating the solution of the problem by irregular movement. Poland. 13. With a pre-war Jewish population of just under 10% of the total, the Jews constituted 27.3% of the inhabitants of the cities and towns, and only 3.2% of the rural population. When Poland was partitioned in 1939, it is estimated that the territory occupied by the Germans was inhabited by 2,042,000 Jews, while that which came under Soviet rule contained 1,309,000. 14. We received conflicting information as to the extent of active antisemitism in Poland before the war. There is no doubt that it existed and was accompanied by economic discrimination against the Jews. A document supplied to us by a Jewish organization, however, states that before the war Polish workers and most of the peasants generally refused to play the anti-Semitic game, and the workers in particular often defended the Jews against their assailants. The development of nationalization, state enterprise, and cooperative societies in Poland before the war not only led to the narrowing of what had been the normal field for Jewish activity, but, owing to racial feeling and competition for a living, led also to the gradual elimination of Jews from the industries taken over. This in pre-war Poland resulted in an overcrowding of the professions and other occupations still open to private enterprise, in which the majority of Jews had been employed. 1931 census total population 31,915,000. Jews by religion 3,113,000. 9.8%. 1939 official estimate total population 35,339,000. Jews by religion 3,351,000. 9.7%. Page 5. 15. We received a number of accounts of Polish participation in the German campaign of extermination of the Jews. Intense German propaganda was directed to inflaming the Poles against them, and it would indeed be remarkable if it had been entirely without effect on some individuals. In view, however, of the strong opposition of the Poles to anything emanating from the Germans, we doubt whether the propaganda did much more than keep existing antisemitism alive. Except for the closing sentence, we think the position during the war is stated with fair accuracy in the following quotation from the document referred to above. In the defense of Warsaw and other cities, the Jews participated and fought side by side with the Poles, and a better understanding between the two peoples seems to have been evolved during the Polish campaign. However, it was reported that when the Germans first occupied the country, some Polish anti-Semitic groups collaborated with the Nazis in their anti-Jewish policies. This was limited to relatively small groups of young people. The majority of the Polish people refused to collaborate with the Nazis on any score, including that of anti-Semitism. When the Jews, facing a desperate situation, decided to resist the complete destruction of the ghettos with arms, the Polish underground movement provided them with weapons. Thousands of Jews, according to reliable reports, have succeeded in escaping the ghettos and have fled to the small towns and villages. The peasants are reported to have hidden them from the German executioners, and a general feeling of solidarity with the Jews is prevailing throughout the country. The penalty for harboring a Jew was that all the inmates in the house in which he was found were shot. 16. It is impossible to secure accurate statistics in Poland today, but it is estimated that only 80,000 of the former Jewish population of 3,351,000 are now there. In our view, based on information obtained from a number of widely different sources, the vast majority of this number now want to leave Poland, and will, if they can. 17. Their reasons for leaving are many and cogent. In our view, it is not correct to say that at the present time, a general feeling of solidarity with the Jews prevails throughout the country. The contrary appears to be the case. Indeed, there seems to be a very considerable measure of hostility among the population towards the Jews. In a country ravaged by war, perhaps more so than any other, with its economy disrupted, the Jews and Poles are competitors for a meager livelihood. The laws give Jews the right to claim property that once belonged to them or deceased relatives, but the exercise of that right against the Polish possessor is in itself a cause of hostility. Indeed, stories were told of Jews being deterred from claiming what was lawfully theirs by threats to their personal safety. 18. Throughout the country there is a high degree of lawlessness. We are satisfied that the government is doing what? Page 6. It can by the passage of legislation to destroy antisemitism, but, until the rule of law is restored, the enforcement of its mandates must be both spasmodic and ineffective. We have referred to the narrowing effect in pre-war Poland of nationalization and state enterprise on Jewish economy, and there is a danger that the present regime, while preventing antisemitism so far as it can, may by its policy in other fields, restrict the area of Jewish activity. There are many signs of inflation, few of expanding private business. Jews occupy prominent positions in the government, and a number are employed in the civil service and police. This of itself appears to be a cause of hostility towards the Jews, since responsibility for unpopular actions of the government is attributed to them. 19. In addition, there was the elimination by the Germans of the whole foundation of Jewish life and culture, confiscation of their funds and property, the destruction of their synagogues, and the obliteration of their cemeteries. For Polish Jews, there are so many reminders of their suffering, and of the death of their relatives, that to start again in Poland must indeed be a most formidable task. In the small village of Loix, there were formerly about 3,000 Jews. Now there are only 20. This village is no doubt typical of countless other villages and cities throughout Europe. Such a situation cannot fail to be disheartening and distressing to a returning Jew, often the sole survivor of his family. The desire must be intensely strong to pick up the threads of life again elsewhere where opportunities appear more favorable, where he will not be surrounded by a population inclined to resent his presence, and where he will not be perpetually reminded of past events. 20. Before the war, Zionism in Poland was strong and a large number of Polish Jews migrated to Palestine. Political Zionism, with its demand for the creation of a Jewish state, is strong among the Jewish survivors. Accounts of life in Palestine given before the war are remembered and rendered doubly attractive by contrast with the ordeals they have endured. These accounts are repeated now and play their part in inducing the Jews to set out on the road to Germany, which is believed to lead to Palestine. Many Jewish organizations are now operating in Poland, and a Jew who is homeless will normally make contact with them. If he wishes to leave Poland, he will in all likelihood be advised to express his preference for Palestine. In association with others, it becomes a fervent wish fervently. From 1922 to 1929, some 46% of Jewish immigrants to Palestine were from Poland. After 1933, this percentage declined due to the increased immigration from Germany, caused by Nazi persecution. During the 4 years 1936 through 1939, German and Austrian immigrants, representing only a negligible percentage for the earlier period, increased from 30 to 57% of the total. The proportion of Polish to total Jewish immigrants declined from 41 to 11%. Page 7. Expressed. But without propaganda or personal influence, there are, as we have indicated, sufficient reasons for Jews to wish to leave Poland and go to a country where they can be assured of sympathy and help. 21. In addition to the Polish Jews now in Poland, those Poles and Polish Jews now in the USSR can, under an agreement entered into between the two governments, withdraw from Soviet citizenship and return to Poland. Some have already arrived, and responsible officials declare that a further 800,000, including about 150,000 Jews, are expected to come. It appears to be the general view that the majority of the Jews returning will not wish to remain in Poland. Some, however, may settle in the lands taken over from Germany, and we gathered that this would be welcomed by the Polish government, although it is stated that no obstacle is placed in the path of Jews who wish to leave. 22. In view of this information and the possible departure of the majority of the 80,000, referred to in paragraph 16, up to 200,000 Jews may wish to leave the country, and Poland consequently must be regarded as one of the chief possible sources of mass migration. Movement across the green border, that is to say, through the woods and forests on the frontier in the southwest, is facilitated by the terrain and by the inadequacy of frontier controls in territory only lately brought under Polish administration. 23. UNRRA is operating in Poland, and we believe that if it were allowed to provide reception centers, especially to assist those returning from the USSR, much suffering would be prevented and perhaps a stabilizing influence introduced. 24. In what was inevitably a fleeting visit, some of us saw part of the work which the International Red Cross in Warsaw is doing to trace the fate or whereabouts of Poles and to supply information to inquirers at home or abroad, meager as it may often be. There is no special section for Jews, but the work is largely concerned with them. We feel that this merciful work is greatly handicapped by the inadequacy of premises, equipment, and staff. The Central Jewish Committee has a similar office. 25. The existence of an organization deliberately facilitating emigration was not established, but it seems probable that a kind of grapevine or underground system has come into existence, whereby the emigrating Jew is passed on from hand to hand on the way out. We felt great concern lest this migration increase into an uncontrollable flood, leading to much suffering and chaos in the countries of passage, but information obtained since our visit indicates that there has been at least a temporary reduction in the flow. The two main routes that were followed at the time of our visit, both ending in the American zone of page 8, Germany, were through Berlin and through Vienna, Linz, and Salzburg, France. 26. Before the war, France had a Jewish population of about 320,000. It is estimated that there are now about 180,000. Although about 80,000 of these are not French nationals, the overwhelming majority are permanent residents, not coming within the refugee or displaced persons categories. In February, some 40,000 Jews were in need of varying forms of relief, largely supplied by the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. The French government provides some assistance for the 5,000 who have returned out of the 120,000 deported. Another problem is presented by the substantial number of orphan Jewish children, who are now being cared for in most instances by private agencies. It is understood that there are some 20,000 recent refugees, to whom France may be unable to extend the right of permanent residence. At present, this group is handicapped by difficulty in securing permits to work or travel. Czechoslovakia. 27. Through Czechoslovakia must pass the other mainstream of Jewish migrants on their way to Vienna. Before Munich, the Jewish population of Czechoslovakia totaled some 360,000. By September 1939, mainly as a result of emigration, the Jews within pre-Munich boundaries numbered but 315,000, about 80,000 in Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia, approximately 135,000 in Slovakia, and around 100,000 in the Carpatho-Ukraine. Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia. 28. From the Czech provinces, perhaps an additional 10,000 succeeded in emigrating after the outbreak of the war, thus escaping the fate of many thousands of their relatives, friends, and neighbors left behind. About 68,000 entered concentration camps. Only about 3,000 survived. About 10,000 Czech Jews have returned, 2,500 or so from the countries in which they found temporary refuge, many of them as soldiers in the Czechoslovak armies. There are also 6,000 to 8,000 Jews from the Subcarpathian Ukraine, who regard themselves as Czechoslovak citizens, so that there are roughly 16,000 registered Jews in Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia. It is estimated that, in addition, there are probably 3,000 to 4,000 unregistered Jews. Following the liberation of the country, all anti-Jewish laws and decrees were voided. All compulsory transfers of Jewish property were declared null and void under